Hello and welcome back to the Hazzabhajan YouTube channel. It is Harry here, and today it is time for another Where Are They Now style video. I'm well aware that this is a format that has kind of been taken from a different YouTube channel in the name of HITC7s, but I will leave a link to the video that got the inspiration for this particular video in the description down below, so at least I'm giving credit where it's due. The 2010 World Cup in South Africa was the first to be held on African soil, with thousands of baying fans accompanied by the extremely divisive vuvuzelas, but which I personally absolutely love, cramming into the stadia to watch the tournament unfold game by game. Since it has been 10 years since that World Cup, most of the young talents at the finals will assumedly just be starting to hit their prime or be very slightly past it. So I thought I'd look at every single team who played at the 2010 World Cup, find their youngest player whom they brought to South Africa, and see how they're faring now. For clarity, they don't need to have had any game time at all at the tournament, they just needed to be in the 23-man squad for the finals in order to qualify for this video. So without any further ado, here is every 2010 World Cup team's youngest player. Where are they now? Uruguay, Nicolas Madeira. We will go in group position order for each set of 4 teams, meaning that Uruguay, who came top of Group A, are up first. 21-year-old Nicolas Madeira had joined Ajax in January of 2010 after impressing in midfield for Nacional in his homeland, but his World Cup campaign would be mixed. Whilst Uruguay would reach the semi-finals, Madeira would only make 3 substitute appearances, even being sent off in their group game against France after accruing 2 yellow cards in the space of just 18 minutes after coming onto the pitch. He wouldn't quite cut it at Ajax, and after a few years back in South America, he has spent the last 4.5 years of his career at Seattle Sounders in the MLS, winning the MLS Cup in 2016. Mexico, Giovanni Dos Santos. A La Masia graduate who was tipped for big things but never quite made the grade, Giovanni Dos Santos was still highly rated in 2010 as a 21-year-old forward, despite spending the season on loan at Galatasaray from Spurs. He started all of Mexico's 4 games in the finals but didn't score once, and from then on his career rather petered out. After leaving Spurs in 2012, he spent 2 seasons at Villarreal but couldn't find any form of consistency, and after 3 years in the US with LA Galaxy, he is back in his homeland with Club America, scoring just twice in 21 games for them last season. South Africa, Antoine Konkaff. The Bafana suffered the ignominious fate of being the only World Cup hosts not to make it out of the group stages in the competition's history, with their youngest player being Antoine Konkaff at 22, a versatile defender who was playing for Genk in Belgium at the time. His only World Cup appearance came during South Africa's final group game against France, whom they shockingly beat 2-1, and Nkonga spent the first 55 minutes on the pitch, by which point South Africa were already 2-0 up. He returned to his homeland by 2016, playing for Mamelodi Sundowns, and he was on loan at Amazulu last year, but tragically in November he was killed in a car accident at the age of just 33. France, Hugo Lloris. The first proper success story in this video, Hugo Lloris was one of the youngest players at the finals, if that makes any sense, as he would turn 24 in December 2010. He had been named Ligue 1 Goalkeeper of the Season whilst playing for Lyon in 2009-10, and he was rewarded for this with playing in all of France's games, which would only total 3 after discontent in the camp led to wretched performances on the pitch. As well as there being a strike in the camp, because of course there was. They're the French after all. He joined Spurs in 2012 where he remains to this day, and he now captains both club and country, lifting the World Cup for France in 2018. Argentina, Javier Pastore. As Argentina boss, Diego Maradona would select over 100 players for his country in just 2 years as the manager, but in his 23-man squad for the World Cup, the youngest player he picked was Javier Pastore, a promising attacking midfielder who was with Palermo at the time. He would only play 13 minutes across 2 substitute appearances in South Africa, but after a stellar 2010-11 season with Palermo, he became the first flagship signing of PSG's new money-flushed era in 2011. His form in Paris was inconsistent to say the least, and especially from 2015, he would suffer numerous niggling injuries which stunted his development further, and he would depart for Roma in 2018 at a €15 million loss on the Parisians' part, where he's only made 32 appearances in 2.5 seasons, and none at all this season. South Korea, Kim Bo-kyung. A familiar face to Cardiff fans, Kim Bo-kyung would spend 3 years at the Cardiff City Stadium between 2012 and 2015 before returning to Asia with Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors, and after spells like Kashiwa Raceway and Ulsan Hyundai, he rejoined Jeonbuk last year. Unbelievably, he was playing in Japan's 2nd tier when he was called up by South Korea for this World Cup, albeit on loan from Aida Trinata from Cerezo Osaka in Japan's top flight. But the 20-year-old wouldn't make it onto the pitch at all, becoming the first player in this video to have received no game time during the World Cup at all. Greece, Stelios Niis. The first player born in the 1990s to feature in this video, Stelios Niis was just 20 when Otto Reagos selected him for Greece's 2010 World Cup campaign after a stellar campaign in midfield for Panathinaikos, and he made 2 substitute appearances for the Ethniki as they went out in the group stages. He showed a lot of promise in his earlier career, but he made 129 out of his 239 club appearances to date before he turned 21, and he's become a journeyman ever since, playing for 9 different clubs across Italy, Belgium, Israel and Greece, where he now plays for the top tier side Voros. Nigeria, Lukman Haruna. Lukman Haruna was a star at Monaco in 2010, making 28 appearances in all competitions as a 19-year-old midfielder, and he was rewarded for his efforts with 2 starts at the World Cup, although he was left out for their crucial last game against South Korea. Those 28 appearances would be the most he has made in a single season to date, as a move to Dynamo Kiev in 2011 failed to bear fruit, and after 3 loans away, he was released in 2017. He has since played in countries like Lithuania, Tunisia and Armenia, and 2 of the clubs he has played for since 2015 no longer exist, which is perhaps an indication of how much his star has fallen, even more so considering he is currently a free agent. USA, Jozy Altidore. Jozy Altidore was somehow rewarded for just 1 goal in 28 games for relegated Hull City in the Premier League with a call-up to the USMNT for the World Cup, where, true to form, he started in all 4 games and failed to score. I may be being harsh on him, since he was prolific for AZ Alkmaar in the Eredivisie between 2011 and 2013, and he has a strike rate for his current club Toronto FC, where he's been since 2015, of 1 goal every 3 games. But during 2 stints in the Premier League, one with Hull and one with Sunderland, he scored twice in 70 games. For a striker,
that is abysmal.
England, Joe Hart. England's 3rd choice goalie in South Africa, Joe Hart would quickly establish himself as the undisputed 1st choice before too long, after 2 fantastic seasons at Man City in the years following that World Cup. He will remain 1st choice until a shocking Euro 2016, followed by Pep Guardiola's arrival at the Etihad saw him drop down the pecking order once again after falling out of favour with the Spaniard, and loans to Torino and West Ham would prove unsuccessful. He was sold to Burnley in 2018, but after half a season he was once again relegated to the bench after some unconvincing displays, and he now plays backup to Hugo Lloris at Spurs. Slovenia, Rene Kiemann. Mop-head defensive midfielder Rene Kiemann was playing for Inter Milan at the time of the 2010 World Cup, but the 20-year-old wouldn't play a minute for his nation at the finals, who finished in 3rd in their group. Ever since, his career has been plagued by injuries, hindering his 4-year stint at Bologna and 2-year spell with Granada in Spain, and his career now hangs in the balance as he is a free agent after being released by Nantes in the summer. Algeria, Riku Budapus. A highly rated prospect at Sochaux, Riku Budapus only made his Algeria debut 1 month before the tournament began in a friendly game against Ireland, and he would make his 2nd appearance for his country in their drab 0-0 draw with England. Surprisingly, when his move came away from Sochaux, it was to lowly Bastia in 2013, but after a great 2016-17 season with Montpellier, Real Betis took a chance on him, which sadly didn't pay off for the Algerian, and he now plays for 10-time French champions but current relegation battlers Saint-Etienne. Germany, Toni Kroos. A youthful Germany squad who finished 3rd at the tournament featured 9 players who were 23 or under, with the youngest of them all being Toni Kroos at just 20. After an impressive season at Bayer Leverkusen on loan from Bayern Munich, Kroos would play 4 games at the 2010 World Cup, all of them as a substitute, but he'd go on to establish himself as one of the finest creative midfielders in the game over the next 4 years at Bayern, and he played a key role in helping Germany win the 2014 World Cup. A player with fantastic vision and a cannon of a right foot, Kroos joined Real Madrid in the immediate aftermath of the finals in Brazil, where he has won everything on offer to him in abundance. Ghana, Jonathan Mensah. Ghana bettered Germany's under-23 player count, with over half of their squad being no older than 23, although only 1 teenager would make the cut. Jonathan Mensah was a 19-year-old centre-back who had been loaned out by Udinese to sister club Granada for the 2009-10 season, and he played 2 group stage games as well as in their round of 16 win over the USA, partnering his namesake John Mensah at the back in 2 of those matches, although he would miss out on their quarter-final exits at the hands of Uruguay. It didn't work out for him at Udinese, and he moved to Evian-Tonon-Gaillard in France in 2011, where he would spend 5 seasons at, and after a brief stint with Anji Makhachkala, he moved to Columbus Crew in 2017, whom he now captains. Australia, Nikita Rukavina. Forward Nikita Rukavina had moved to Australia from Ukraine when he was 14, and he chose to represent the Socceroos in 2008, making 2 substitute appearances as a 22-year-old in South Africa. Playing for FC Twente at the time, he would play for Hertha Berlin and Mainz in Germany over the course of the following 4 years, but he didn't do enough to earn a call-up for the Socceroos in 2014. He now finds himself in Israel with Maccabi Haifa, having been there since 2016 after a season spent with the self-dubbed most racist club in the world in Beitar Jerusalem. Although that's by the fans, it must be noted, not by the club themselves. Serbia, Radislav Petrovic. In their first World Cup as a fully independent nation, Serbia would stunningly beat Germany in the group stages, even saving a penalty from Lukas Podolski, but they wouldn't make it any further. The youngest player was a 20-year-old midfielder by the name of Radoslav Petrovic, whose only game at the finals came as a substitute in that famous win, and he was starring for Partizan Belgrade at the time. His career has been nomadic ever since, turning out for the likes of Blackburn, Gençler Birliği, Dynamo Kiev and Sporting Lisbon, but he is now at Almeria in Spain's Segunda Division, where he has been since 2019. The Netherlands, Gregory van der Wiel. At the World Cup, where the Netherlands turned their back on all of their previous footballing principles and went all gung-ho, their approach almost worked as it took them all the way to the final, where they would lose to Spain and see Nigel de Jong plant his foot into Xabi Alonso's chest. At 22, Gregory van der Wiel was their youngest player, but he played 5 times in the Dutch campaign as a right back, including all 120 minutes of the final, after impressing for Ajax. In 2012, PSG snapped him up, but from there his promise began to fade, and he's been without a club since March 2019, after Toronto FC released him following a bust-up between him and their coach in training. Japan, Takayuki Morimoto. Having scored in the J-League before he turned 16, big things were expected of striker Takayuki Morimoto, especially after Catania of Serie A bought him in 2006, but his star never really shone, suffering many injuries and only scoring 15 times for the Italian side across 5 seasons. After returning to Japan in 2013 at the age of 25, Morimoto joined AEP Kozani's in Greece in October, and he hasn't won a cap for his national team since 2012, not even getting onto the pitch once during Japan's 4 games at the 2010 World Cup. Denmark, Christian Eriksen. The youngest player at the tournament, Christian Eriksen was already being touted as a future star at the age of just 18 after coming through the youth ranks at Ajax and impressing in the first team. Despite playing only 15 times for the Amsterdam outfit during the course of the previous season, he would play 2 games at the World Cup as Denmark went out in the groups, and after impressing over the next 3 seasons, Spurs brought him to White Hart Lane with the money left over from Gareth Bale's sale, and he went on to become their creative fulcrum over the next 6 seasons. His time there ended in acrimony after he expressed his desire to leave in the summer of 2019, and he got his wish in January, but he's yet to impress Antonio Conte at Inter Milan, and does look likely to be on the move again sooner rather than later. Cameroon, Joel Matip. The current Liverpool defender Joel Matip was actually registered as a midfielder for Cameroon's 2010 World Cup squad, who were the first team to be eliminated from the tournament. Like Eriksen, he was only 18 when he was called up to the squad, and he played in their opening defeat against Japan, but didn't feature in either of their final 2 group games, both of which the team lost. After 7 years starring for Schalke, Matip joined Liverpool on a free in 2016, where he has won the Premier League and the Champions League as a more than capable partner to the indomitable Virgil van Dijk. Paraguay, Rodolfo Gamara. 21-year-old winger Rodolfo Gamara had only won 2 caps for his country prior to the World Cup, and he would only add 1 more cap during his career, but it didn't come during this tournament, as he failed to make it onto the pitch during Paraguay's surprise run to the quarterfinals. He spent his whole career to date in South America, with the bulk of it spent at Paraguayan powerhouses Libertad, but he currently finds himself in mid-table Chilean side CD Cobresal. Slovakia, Vladimir Weiss. The 3rd international footballer in his family, and, curiously enough, the 3rd international footballer called Vladimir Weiss in his family, Weiss's father, obviously also called Vladimir, called him up for Slovakia's debut international tournament post-independence. He would play in 3 of his country's 4 games as they surprisingly reached the knockout stages, but he wasn't picked for their famous win over Italy, and they didn't win a game when he was on the pitch. On loan at Bolton from Man City at the time of the finals, Weiss didn't fulfil his early promise, and after time spent in Italy, Greece and Qatar, he is now back in his homeland with Slovan Bratislava. New Zealand, Chris Wood. New Zealand went into their first World Cup since 1982 with a mix of professionals, semi-professionals and amateurs, with 2 of their players being free agents and another working full-time as a banker, yet they exited the group stages having drawn all 3 of their games and being the only unbeaten side at the entire tournament. Even Spain lost in their first group game to Switzerland. Chris Wood was a substitute in all 3 of those games at the age of just 18, and he has carved out a relatively successful career for himself, being a championship level striker until 2017 when he was signed by Burnley, for whom he has scored 37 goals in 109 games in the Premier League to date. A big and bullish striker who is dominant in the air, his best season was at Leeds in 2016-17 after he scored 27 goals in 44 games for the Championship side, which led to the Clarets signing him up. Italy, Leonardo Bonucci. From a team who surpassed all pre-tournament expectations, we now move to a team who fell way below them in the form of Italy, who, in one of the easiest World Cup groups ever assembled, couldn't even win a game, drawing with Paraguay and New Zealand before losing to Slovakia in their final game to finish last. Leonardo Bonucci was the youngest member of that squad, although attempting to dislodge Fabio Cannavaro and Giorgio Chiellini would prove impossible, but considering Italy's abysmal performances, I'm sure it wouldn't have hurt too much to feature him at least once. That very summer, Juventus bought him from Bari, and barring a season at Nouveau Riche AC Milan in 2017-18, he has stayed at the Turin Giants ever since, forming an indomitable centre-back pairing with Giorgio Chiellini in the process. Brazil, Ramirez. Brazil only brought one player who was 23 or under to the World Cup, and that player, who was in fact aged 23, was Benfica, soon to be Chelsea midfielder Ramirez, who would make 3 substitute appearances in the group stages and start in the round of 16 win over Chile, but was left out of their quarter-final exit at the hands of the Dutch. A pacey and energetic box-to-box midfielder, Ramirez signed for the Blues in the immediate aftermath of the tournament's conclusion, where he would spend 5.5 years before sacrificing his career for wads of cash out in China with Jiangsu Suning. He eventually returned back to Brazil with Palmeiras, but he is currently a free agent after being released by the Brazilian Giants back in November. Portugal, Fabio Coentrão. Fabio Coentrão's career was sucked out of him following an ill-fated transfer to Real Madrid from Benfica in 2011, as he failed to overhaul Marcelo at left-back, only making 58 league appearances across 7 seasons at the Bernabeu. After departing Real Ave in 2019, Coentrão announced his retirement in January last year, but reversed the decision in October to re-sign for the Portuguese Primeira Liga outfit. Like Ramirez for Brazil, Coentrão was the only under-23 player that Portugal took to South Africa, aged 22 at the time, but he played every single minute of their campaign, which was a curious one in that they scored 7 goals in 4 games, but all of them came in one blitz against North Korea. Ivory Coast, Seydou Doumbia. One of the tripartite of overpowered FIFA 15 players who played for Roma alongside compatriot Gervinho and Colombian forward Victor Ibarbo, Seydou Doumbia was a prolific and pacey 22-year-old striker who had just bagged 30 goals for young boys in Switzerland the season before the 2010 World Cup. He only played 11 minutes at the finals as a sub against North Korea in their final game, but he earned a move to CSKA Moscow after the tournament's conclusion, but ever since his move to Roma in January 2015, his career has somewhat faded away. He made a pointless loan move to Newcastle in 2016, where he only played 3 times, and after a season spent at both Girona and Sion, he is now currently a free agent. North Korea, Pak Sung-hyuk. North Korea brought the youngest squad to the 2010 World Cup with an average age of just 24, but after a decent showing in their first game against Brazil, in which they only lost 2-1, they decided to televise their next game against Portugal, the first time a football match would ever be shown live in the secretive nation. But unfortunately, they were battered 7-0, which clearly made the decision not a very wise choice in the end, and their final group game against the Ivory Coast saw them lose 3-0 to finish last. Some of the fates of those players, much like most of the country's activities, are shrouded in mystery, and as far as my research could tell me, one such case is their youngest player who went with the squad. Pak Sung-hyuk had turned 20 just before the tournament began, and he didn't play once in any of North Korea's 3 games, but I genuinely could not find out where he is today. I presume he is still playing in North Korea, but the latest piece of information I have on him was that he was playing for Subic back in 2010, and his career trajectory ever since, to me at least, is unknown. Spain, Javi Martinez. Spain went into this tournament widely considered as the best international team in the world, and they lived up to that billing by winning the whole tournament, forming a part of 3 consecutive major international titles which they won, providing of course you discount the 2009 Confederations Cup, in which they lost to the USA in the semi-finals. Javi Martinez was a promising 21-year-old defensive midfielder playing for Athletic Bilbao at the time, but he would only play 13 minutes across Spain's entire campaign, as their midfield was almost impossible to break into. When Cesc Fabregas reduced it to substitute appearances, you know you're overcrowded in that position. Martinez would break the Bundesliga transfer record when Bayern Munich signed him in 2012, and despite an injury hit 8.5 years at the Allianz Arena, he has won the league every single season he has been there. Chile, Alexis Sanchez. Bizarrely, Chile's 2 youngest players, Mauricio Ayla and Alexis Sanchez, both played for Udinese at the time of the World Cup, but Sanchez is the younger by 6 months and, undoubtedly, the one with the more distinguished career. He started every one of Chile's games as they made it to the knockouts for only the 2nd time in 48 years, and within a year he would be at Barcelona, where he would spend 3 fantastic seasons before being sold to Arsenal for £35 million. He would hit new heights at the Emirates, carrying the Arsenal side on his shoulders for the most part, scoring 60 in 122 games in the Premier League primarily as a winger, but since departing there, his performances have dipped dramatically and he is attempting to revitalise his career out in Italy with Inter Milan after a dreadful spell with Manchester United. Switzerland, Xherdan Shaqiri. Switzerland's stunning win over the Spaniards in their first game wouldn't be enough to see them qualify for the knockouts after they lost to Chile and drew with Honduras in their next 2 games. In that draw against the Hondurans, Jana Shaqiri, aged just 18, would make a 12-minute cameo, but it would be at the 2014 and 2018 World Cups where he really made an impression, even scoring a hat-trick in Brazil. Shaqiri's talents have always unquestionably been there, but it has primarily been a question of consistency and applying those talents which has been holding him back from becoming a world-class player. And despite having Bayern Munich, Inter Milan and Liverpool, his current club, on his CV, he did also play at Stoke for 3 years. Honduras, Johnny Palacios. The team who finished bottom of Group H marks the final entrance in this video, and if you've made it this far, have a pat on the back. 23-year-old Johnny Palacios made history alongside his brothers Jerry and Wilson as the first trio of siblings to play at a World Cup, although Johnny himself didn't play a single minute. He spent 16 years at Honduran powerhouses Olimpia before transferring to Real Sociedad, but the Honduran equivalent, in 2019, where he remains today. That about concludes today's video on the fate of every single 2010 World Cup team's youngest player and of course where they are now. If you did enjoy this video, please do feel free to hit that like button and of course subscribe while you are at it. And go and check out all my other videos and follow me on all my social medias. They will be left down in the description. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you then.